Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life, the podcast. You're listening to Author's Corner, where we highlight and showcase our local authors. Today, I'm speaking to Mike Hassell, author of A Deep Tradeoff, Restoring Balance and Respect in a Polarized Angry World. And Mike and I are going to be talking today on the topic, Understanding the Trade-offs in Conflict. Welcome, Mike.
Great to be here, Myrna.
You're very welcome. All right. So let me give you guys a brief introduction. Deep Tradeoffs helps readers find more balance, peace of mind, and even friendship in a polarized, angry world. In just 200 pages of conversational, even-handed thoughtfulness, this book probes the eternally conflicting values and truths tangled up in our shared concerns and divided commitments. More than 300 short quotes from Samuel Adams and Aesop to Oscar Wilde and Stevie Wonder eliminate the competing yet intertwined perspectives of sages, philosophers, artists, professors, pundits, and ordinary people with extraordinary insights. By entering the conversation, you'll fortify or challenge your own ideas about beliefs, truth, knowledge, ideology, peace, the subconscious, including intuition, and much more. Wise people see both sides of a problem and have a reason for choosing theirs. Rather than arguing, we can understand the trade-offs involved and choose our path with a fuller understanding of what we're getting and what we're giving up. So that's going to be the focus of our conversation today. So, Mike, as we dive right in, I love topics that I have experience in, and one of the most memorable parts of my high school education was being on the debate team. I absolutely loved it. And on the debate team, you have a couple of minutes, and you've got to argue in both sides. So that opened up my mind to hearing other people's opinion and seeing their side. So in your book, you write that wise people see both sides of a problem and then have a reason for choosing their side. Can you unpack that for our listeners?
Sure. I think a good place to start would be with how I came to be thinking about deep trade-offs, and it's short. I was born into a family of engineers, farm mechanics, auto mechanics. Uncle got a degree in electrical engineering and ended up working at IBM making the barcode scanners. So I really wanted to be Bill Steele. Went to Georgia Tech, have an electrical engineering degree. I was interested in humanities because I'm just broadly curious about everything, and ended up going into a management career rather than strictly engineering. So I was in a publishing business on the great ideas of history, sort of pursuing, these humanities things that I had never really fulfilled. And at mid-age, around age 40, I had this aha moment that these problems, we were doing a series on the moral problems of our age: war and terrorism, drugs and alcohol, family and sexuality, abortion and euthanasia, et cetera. And particularly in the one on abortion and euthanasia, I saw that these are not problems like I think of problems as an engineer. I'm not going to have a formula or an algorithm or some structured decision process to arrive at an answer. And rather, these are separate moral truths, values, principles that they're valid, but they're in conflict, and you can't realize all of them at one time. Something's got to give. And so, this led over 20 years to thinking and researching and reviewing everything I read in that light and seeing examples of it. I've identified about 30 big trade-offs of this kind, and I've written about 3 in the first book. But the idea is that if you take them all together, is that there's not a right and a wrong answer in these problems. There are 2 right answers, and their relative merits shift with the situation and the context and the background and the values and priorities that people have. So your experience is perfect for this because you get to put yourself in other people's shoes and argue from their point of view. I've heard that, for instance, Jewish families do this, and in their culture, they, you might think it's just argumentative, but I think it's a way of training people to see both sides of a problem and be wise about that.
I love that. And I'm going to zoom in on the one that to me it's a perfect one to look at. You can argue on both sides of the abortion table, right? You can argue that life begins as soon as there's conception and abortion is wrong, and you can argue that if a mother recognizes that her child is going to live a life that's, like if they have cerebral palsy or something, then it's her choice whether she wants to abort or if she got raped. And yeah, I mean, you can argue on both sides. Then you can argue, I remember a movie that had profound impact on me. And this was a girl, I think, I don't remember the name of the movie right now, but she was fighting in a ring and she got sucker punched and fell and hit her head. And she couldn't move. She lied there. She couldn't do anything for herself. And she wanted to die. And nobody would kill her. And you know how she did it? The only thing she can do is bite her tongue, and she bit her tongue until someone agreed to help her die. So, I mean, I love that. So if we're saying that you can argue both sides, you can argue both sides, right?
Yeah.
And
one way to look at this is that, there's a value to autonomy. In a free society, people ought to be respected to make decisions for themselves and not have to be told by someone else how they have to live, right? There's also respect for life. There is the duty not to harm, which involves both the mother and the baby. There's the rule, duty, respect for law, duty to respect the law. All four of those things are involved in both abortion and euthanasia. You cannot have all of those things. A lot of people feel so strongly about the duty not to harm, they apply it to the baby and not so much to the mother, and they're willing to tell other people what to do, right? That would be the pro-life position. On the other hand, people who are way more emphatic about independence and autonomy, and that people live their own lives, and that they emphasize the harm to the mother as opposed to harm to whether it's a fetus or a child. But everybody knows these details, but I think it's helpful to reduce it down to those principles. We all believe in those four principles.
Right.
I think every decent person believes in that in some way or another. And so understanding that they are all at play and they're not fully realizable humanizes us to understand that somebody who disagrees with us is not necessarily wrong.
I love that. So is your book, what is the solution in your book? Are you saying that people should be allowed to make their own decisions, that it's not up to the government, or what is your solution?
Well, I'm not prescribing a solution for that. I'm pointing out the balance that has to be struck in these values. And so what I'm looking at is, for instance, peace and striving. We all say we're for peace, but we fight and we strive and we want to overcome injustices. And that's part of the purpose of living, is to address wrongs, right? Make things better. But that's not peaceful. We claim we're peaceful, but we don't behave that way. And so the point is to recognize that we're making these choices, and neither one is as clearly right as we might like to think.
Yes. Well, it's true. Acceptance, I learned that a long time ago, is that in any relationship, in order for it to prosper, you have to accept that other people have had a different path to you, and they're different from you, and what they think or what they believe, you shouldn't comment on it. You should allow them to, have their own opinion. But I like what you say that conflict is a feature, not a bug. So why are we looking at conflict as a bug? Yes. Tell me about that.
The reason I put it that way is some people seem to think that if there's conflict, there's something wrong because somebody's not getting it right. There's a right, and we're disagreeing about how to get to right. And my point is, there's not a clear one right. There's multiple rights, and we're balancing them. And people with wisdom and humanity take that into account, and they don't condemn people that they don't agree with. So the point is, disagreement's inevitable in any group of people, particularly free people. I mean, our founders do this very well. They set up our institutions to check and balance so that you have to work with other people. So I think recognizing this symmetry, this seesaw kind of thing, this fact that none of us have it right, that even our most fervent beliefs may be true 80 or 90% of the time. But if we think they're right 100% of the time, we're either perfect or we're dead. Because we can't be improved, right?
Right. Yeah, the interview that I just came off of before this one was very interesting. He talked about how each group has their own beliefs, right? And you might have one belief in America, but if you go to Russia or the Ukraine, you have different beliefs. And who's to say that your belief is the correct one, right? So that's basically what we're saying here, that everybody is entitled.
Think about liberty and harm, duty not to harm. Some people think that too much liberty is harmful because it lets people get away with things, right? So somebody in an autocratic society may be afraid of democracy. They haven't experienced it. They don't want that much freedom. They'd rather have restrictions that keep them safe. And indeed, a lot of our civic arguments were people looking for comfortable and safe and all those kind of words, and it reduces other people's liberty. It absolutely does when you insist too much on safety and comfort.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So in your book, you said you don't, you're not offering a solution a minute ago, you're offering checks and balances, but are you offering a solution to how humans can learn to value other people's opinion?
Yes. The way I would put it is we value relationships rather than agreement and more than solutions. It's not that you and I have to figure out how we agree so we can be friends. And that seems to be an operating principle these days. I don't like that person. They don't agree with me, and I can't talk to them anymore. Well, that's really lunacy, because we disagree with people, spouses, children, parents. It's part of human nature for people not to see eye to eye on everything. It's inevitable. And it's not a problem. The problem is coercion, which is trying to make somebody else live by my choices of what's best. Mm-hmm. And so that's the message I'm trying to give in this discussion, is that there's good reasons for seeing either side, and there's very little reason to think that you should be able to impose your choices on other people. You have to, in the end, law has to, right? So it's not absolute that you can just do without making commitments, but how you make them and how they bind other people is complex, and it should be generous and humble.
Yeah, I definitely agree, because in relationships, like I said earlier, that you have to learn to accept people and accept their beliefs. And you're right. A lot of people try to change people's beliefs. I just came back from a family vacation. And one of my brother's wife was trying to get people to buy into something that she was saying, and she kept saying it over and over again. And I said to her, "Why is it important that people think that you're right?" Because neither of us know. It was something as stupid as, we were in an Airbnb that was beautiful. And I'm saying that this person created this house for an Airbnb. And she kept saying, no, they created it so that they can use it and then decide to rent it. So because I have been in the Airbnb space and I understand business, that was my belief. But she kept saying it over and over again. And I said, why is it important that you're right? Neither of us know.
Yeah,
but
right.
that is how people go on in life. They keep saying things over and over and over, trying to coerce you, which is exactly what you just said, for you to buy in to what they're saying, right? But a lot of times nobody knows for sure, right?
Yeah, and there's a couple of things to take away from that. One is that people are not shoved into change, they're loved into change. First of all, we need to change ourselves. I think that's a big part of your message, is expecting us to change other people and all that is dicey. We change ourselves first. We have control over that. But to the extent that we're going to find points of agreement and compromise, we should love people and show them why we think our way is good. Maybe they will accept that they're not going to accept hostility and force and coercion. Even if they're wrong, they're going to fight back. This gets to the subconscious part that you've referred to in your open remarks. There's a lot going on in our heads that we're not thinking about, not even aware of. We're making choices on these dichotomies, on these balances that we're not quite fully aware that there even is a choice. Just as an example, focus and sensitivity. I'm very focused and mentally, and my son had an attention disorder, and I learned to understand his distraction is his inability to control his attention. He could not focus because he couldn't command his attention. So there's good reason to be sensitive, right? There's also good reason to focus, but you can't do both at the same time. Right. And so that's the kind of thing we're completely unaware of that. Our subconscious is managing how we focus or not. And so a lot of us end up defending what we've already concluded or what we believe instead of listening and being impartial. We think that's what we are, rational. We're listening to the evidence. We're making reasoned conclusions, right? But a number of psychologists have really pointed out powerfully that that's not the way we live. We see what we believe. We don't always just believe what we see. We're conditioned to look for what we wish to be true. And we say that's true because we want it to be true. You can see a lot of that in recent weeks. A president just stepped away from a campaign, and a lot of people insisted he was something he wasn't. And I think that's not too controversial, at least in the wake of the last few days. He's got some deficits, but people were pretending that he didn't because they were afraid of the consequences, and they saw what they wished to see.
Yeah.
Is that making sense?
Yeah, there's a parable that I use quite a lot, and it's important to bring it up here, where this guy came up to this monk and he said, "What kind of people live here? I'm thinking of moving." And the monk says, "What kind of people live where you live?" And he says, "They're all liars and cheaters." And he says,
"There's plenty of those here."
One, right? Yeah, this is what type of people that live here.
I love it. You're going to find what you're looking for.
This type of people to look for, live here. So basically, yes, people believe what they see and not necessarily, see what they believe, right? So yes. That was one of the questions I have here. So I'm glad that you brought that up. But yeah, talking about Biden, we're not going to get into the political arena. We're talking about the person. My pastor, had a message on Sunday, and he was talking about one of the prophets in the Bible, Elijah, that was old and he was leading, right? Or Moses was old and he was leading. To say that,
right,
that someone like Biden can't lead because he's old, even though he's in absolute faculty of his mind and is doing the hardest job on the planet. You know how hard it is to be president? Oh my goodness. They don't stop calling you. It's a 24-hour job. You don't even sleep. And he's been doing it. And then all of a sudden, he's too old, whatever. And he had to bow to the pressure and back down. But some people are thinking he's good enough to do the job. And some people are thinking he's too old, right? So.
Yeah, and that is not really resolvable. And the danger about talking about real life examples like abortion and Joe Biden is that people quickly divide into tribes mentally. Right. And they're defending what they've concluded about it, where their interests lie. And you do it as well as I do it. And, the way I deal with that in my book is talk about the story of the naked emperor, who's riding through the streets. And it's not an adult who sees the nakedness. It's a child. Mm-hmm. The child does not understand the implications of saying the emperor's naked, right? Everybody else is an adult. And if I admit that it's got this consequence, this might happen. And people are way beyond the fact of whether he's nude or not. They're really into consequences and implications. And children don't see that, and they can call it for what it is. And so some scientists describe that as their special skill. A Nobel scientist that I quote said, I'm not smart. I'm just naive and simple and look at things in this uncomplicated way. And I get insights that other people don't have because they're looking right past an answer.
Right, exactly. And that's exactly what's going on here. Right. We're looking at consequences. We're looking at, maybe he's too old to win, or maybe but he says, I can do the job. So that's not really
Yeah.
what the question was. Right.
Right.
So
Right.
that is, yeah. So I'm glad we're
So they
able
call this
to.
confirmation bias and motivated reasoning is the terms that
Right.
psychologists use. We're looking to confirm what we already think. And
Yes.
our reasoning is motivated to get to that end. We're looking to exclude factors that argue against us and pick the ones and drive
Yes.
toward an answer. And so it's like a lawyer or a soldier, right? Rather than a scout. A scout
Right.
is happy to be proven wrong because maybe your chances of surviving are better. But if you're an advocate trying to get to an answer, then you're going to find ways to get to that answer, even if
Of
it's
course. All the time.
incorrect.
We know that
Right.
listeners do it all the time. So
Right.
there's a skill to doing that. Yes, very
Yes.
true, very true. So I'm glad that we're able to give real life examples, even though you say, yes, real life examples, there are going to be camps, because there are going to be people that believe very strongly in abortion and believe very strongly that you shouldn't, somebody shouldn't have to be responsible for saying, I'm ready to die, all these different things. And then, of course, political, you can never, that's why I always stay away from that conversation.
One of the ways I
The,
deal with that is talk about picking principles, right?
right,
We pick our principles. If you're in the majority, you're all for democracy, right? Having the most votes because you have the most votes. As soon as you get in the minority, you're concerned about rights, minority rights and protection, So people pick their principle depending on which one advances the ends that they want. And sometimes without even awareness that they're unfairly just picking the rules that make them the winner.
right, of course, right. It's all subjective, right?
Yeah.
So, right, so that's true. All right, well, our topic is trade-offs and conflicts. So I want to get to that. What are the trade-offs and conflicts? What are you talking about?
In the book that I've published, I talk about three. I've identified 30, frankly, so there may be 6 or 7 or 8 more books about this if there's a good audience for it. But I've identified. I went through an inventory of values, and there's a 200 more in this list that I have from several different sources, deduplicated, and then I went through and said, for every value, is there another competing value that I can identify? And I did. In every case, there's something else, like kindness, for instance. That's a hard one to figure out a good alternative to. A lot of football coaches will tell you that doesn't work with some of their players. They need to have what they call tough love, and it's not what we think of as kindness, right? And so in every case, you can think of something that really kind of conflicts with it. In the first volume, the Deep Tradeoffs, the book I've written, first chapter is about peace and striving. Touched on that a moment ago, that we often struggle, and for good reason, because that's the way we accomplish things. It's painful, et cetera. Being comfortable and all of that is not our endpoint. Secondly, the second chapter is about imagination and reality. Each of us has ideals, and this is kind of a corollary to imagination. And ideology comes from trying to reach our ideals, but they're not real. They're fantasy in many cases, that we're going to all be equal, for instance. We're born unequal. We have different talents. We have different resources. We have different parents, live in different places. We're capable of doing different things because of where we are. And so we can never be fully equal in condition, right? And if we were try to be, it conflicts with liberty. That's a future chapter, is liberty and equality. But the second chapter is ideals and reality, and how do we come to terms with our fallenness, our inability to live in a utopia. People have tried to make utopias, they never work. So come to terms with our shortcomings and our lack of ability to realize our ideals. That's number 2. Number 3 is honesty and deception, which is a little odd, but who's going to say they're on the side of deception, right? But we all choose deception in certain cases. We lie to our kids about Santa Claus. Okay. A lie is an intentional deception, just to shorten the discussion of what it is. And I don't feel bad about telling my kids about Santa Claus because it brings them joy. That is another value that we choose. Maybe we don't tell somebody that they're dying because it will hurt them. It'll make them suffer. And so duty not to harm conflicts with telling the truth, right? Survival. All of us are going to choose to lie if it means we have a chance to survive. If we get the terrorists to, look that way while I duck out this door. Everybody, I think, a reasonable person would say that's a legitimate choice to make. And so we say that maybe truth is our highest value, but it's not. Survival comes first. Avoiding suffering probably is not far behind. Bringing joy is another one. So you begin to see the point that there are alternative values at play that compromise even what we think is the most obvious truth.
Yeah, I like that one because, when you go to the doctor and he tells you without ever, I've seen it happen several times. It happened to me, and it just happened recently to my husband, where the doctor is looking at some results and he's saying things like, "I'm sure you've got cancer." And I'm thinking that's a horrible thing to say. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
maybe he's thinking that it's just better to just spit it out. But I'm thinking that cancer's a death sentence, and you should not be saying that if you don't know for sure, because it wasn't true for me, it wasn't true for my husband. But they say things like that. So, somebody might think, okay, maybe the doctor might know you have cancer, but then he doesn't want to say because he doesn't want you to, you know what I mean? So you're right. You can't argue on both sides of the coin in that one. It's true.
If I knew right now you're going to die tomorrow, I would not tell you. Right? That would not be a hurtful thing to do. And in these genetic tests we do, there are some that are death sentences. And why learn that you've got this disease that you cannot prevent? I think it's Huntington's disease that my wife has told me about. We ask about Alzheimer's and things like that, but there are genetic predictors that say you're at higher risk for things. Some things I don't want to know that I'm at higher risk for because it's going to ruin what time I do have.
Right.
So, but the question is, should it be my choice or somebody else's choice for me to know? So the story spins on out, right?
Yeah. But I love it. I love what we opened with, that we can always argue on both sides, and we choose one that is based on our journey and our thinking. You know what I mean? Like you just said that you wouldn't want to know if you have a life-threatening illness, and some people would say, I want to know, right? It's just, again, you can.
Right. So there's one other interesting point to make here. Annie Duke wrote a book called Thinking in Bets. And her point is that there are probabilities involved in almost everything we do. We make choices that we think are going to make our future better. But there's never 100% reliability that it's going to do that. And we think, though, that we're right or wrong, and that if we admit that we're wrong, we were 100% right, we've got to change all the way to the other pole, right? That's a bad way of that black and white thinking, because it's a massive shift. People will not do it very easily. But if you come to the general understanding that you're probably right about 60 or 70% of the time with a particular choice, and 30 or 40% of the time there's a reason to do something else, well, circumstances may come along that flip that very quickly. You say, well, in this situation, that 30 or 40 is a better bet. And it makes you more flexible. It makes you more tentative. It makes you more human, at least in your ability to respect someone else's dignity.
Yeah. This is a great conversation. I love it. And we're talking about transforming the mind. We're talking about expanding the mind. We're talking about renewing the mind. All is in the same bucket. And this is a great conversation to have on, on understanding that there are both sides, and each person that picks a side has a reason, right? And you should respect that. So that's amazing. Right. So let's talk about your book now. Your book is called Deep Tradeoffs, Restoring Balance and Respect in a Polarized Angry World. So why did you write it? And what do you want readers to walk away with after reading?
I wrote it because I had discovered this aha thing that was really important to me as an engineer, where I'm trying to find answers and find principles to live by, and trying to apply this in the arts and the arts of life as opposed to my profession. And I had this aha moment that got me thinking differently. So over 20 years, I was seeing examples of this. Now I see them every day. Every time I open up the paper, I see, balanced kind of dichotomies like this. And so I kept examples of it because I had this feeling that I was going to try to do something with it. And after 20 years, I collected a lot of them. And then it occurred to me, this is a great way of approaching polarization. Everybody was complaining about polarization. I think I started 4 years ago. So this would have been, 2020. Trump was ending his first term. Polarization had been with us at least 5 years since he was a candidate, right? And I had one guy came to me and said, "It started with Trump, didn't it?" And I said, "No, it started with humanity, and in the United States, it started before the founding. I've got quotes from Adams and Jefferson calling each other hermaphrodites, son of a mulatto." It's gender and racial stuff. We think it's new to us. It's hundreds of years old, people finding those kind of ways to insult each other.
Yeah.
Democracy is rowdy, and we should expect it, not expect we're all going to get along. So as a matter of fact, our institutions are good ways of channeling disagreement, not creating agreement. They're channeling disagreement. So anyway, I wrote the book because I saw there was an application to the problems of our day. It's the reason I titled the subtitle the way I did. But the more general concept of deep trade-offs it's a broad idea that I've had for 40 years.
Yeah. I love it. Yes. We should all learn to get along, right?
Well, there's advantages to it. I was in a Sunday school once where this lady said, if we think we ought to love everybody, we haven't met enough people. I know this is a place for me.
It's pretty darn hard to do.
You can say that out loud. I'm in. So
it's very darn hard to do. Like Jesus talk about loving your neighbor as yourself and taking the other cheek when someone slaps you. It's very hard to do.
Think about how lovely it is to laugh with somebody, even if you vehemently disagree with them about something. But if you share some sense of awe about a sunset, about an agreement, about a child, about doing something for the needy together, you can get beyond these disagreements and build community. And in the end, I think that's what satisfies.
Well, you're right. Find a common ground because we all got it. And it comes out when there's a tragedy, we find a common ground. So, yes. So it's a great way to end our conversation. Politics is way down the list of what matters. Politics way down the list of what matters. Yes. That's a good way to end the conversation. Yes. Regardless of the different differences, we all have common ground. We probably all love our children and our parents or God or something, you know what I mean? Right. So exactly. Yeah. So find the common ground. So that's amazing. Well, Mike, this has been a great conversation. I am glad that you expanded my awareness on conflict and, take me back to my debating years of being able to argue on both sides and seeing other people's point of view. And yes. Can I leave you with one idea? Sure. Go ahead. If you ask yourself the question, what is the meaning of life? And we could be here for days trying to resolve that, right? You have your ideas, I have my ideas. If I were to say instead, where do you find meaning in life? You may have a whole set of answers that are true for you. I may have a whole set of answers that are true for me. They may be completely different, but we know right away that they are both right. Right? Yes. And so this idea that there's not one answer to things, there's multiple answers that deserve to be considered. And maybe not always embraced. We may still disagree about things, but we can respect people who choose other options. I love it. And we touched on it only slightly, but we're using the word polarization, we're using the word disagreements. It can happen in marriages, which is why a lot of marriages end in divorce. Because it's not only political, it's like right in your home. Even parents and children have different ideas because the child is saying, "Oh, you're too old. It's now a new day. And this is what's going on right now." and the parent saying no, so yes, conflict, disagreements, learning to understand the other side. Yes, I love what
I
you
was leaving a
said. Where do
Pilates
you
class
find
one.
meaning? Yep.
I was leaving a Pilates class one day, and they were standing there asking for people who would volunteer to give advice to the kids that were around this community center. And so I put on the whiteboard there, learn to manage conflict, because you're going to have plenty of it, even in your marriage. And, just because, well, just because somebody disagrees with you doesn't mean you can't love them, right? And so
Right.
never say you always and you never, because that turns a disagreement about a topic into a personal attack, right? Then it's about you and old wounds and all that. So learning to manage conflict skillfully is just an essential life skill. I wish they taught this in the 6th grade.
Yes, very, very true. Very, very true. And on my journey of, personal development, I've learned a thing or two about that, being in from interpersonal relationships. And I've learned that. And I think that that's really is what I came here to do, is to learn these same lessons about, transforming your mind, renewing your mind. And it works with conflict. It works with, understanding someone's point of view. It works with accepting someone else. It works with, never blaming. We can go on and on and on, but you're very right. Conflict resolution and learning how to get along is one of the most important things, right? Or not one of the most important things. It's like, it's one of the things you should learn.
It's way up there.
Right. It's
but we
right
have
up
to
there,
keep
right?
we have to keep relearning these things.
Yes.
They're not easy. We need to be reminded, and so that gets back to how the brain works. And, one of the metaphors that Jonathan Haidt uses, psychologist, is the brain is like an elephant with a rider on top. And the rider is your rational mind trying to make this massive thing go where you want it to go, but it's going to go where it wants to go anyway. Instincts, intuitions, trained reflexes, natural reflexes that are untrained, et cetera. He says that's like 80% of what's going on up here. And wrestling that is a daily task, and developing the habits that do it well is an even longer task. So it's very
You got to
interesting.
do the work, right? You got to do the work, right? It
Right.
doesn't come naturally. You got to do the work. So thank you, Mike, for your book. Tell our listeners where they can pick up a copy of your book. Tell us your website, and if you're on social media, what your social media handles are.
The book is available everywhere. If you go to a bookstore, they can order it. As you know, the book trade now doesn't keep the millions of books that are published every year, so they can order it. You can also order it at Amazon, of course, and see the reviews there that I think are pretty revealing about what the book has meant to them. My website is deeptradeoffs.com. There's a place there where people can write to me if they would like. It's kind of a placeholder at this point. It's just got some blurbs in a connection, a link to Amazon for people who want to get the book. As the audience builds for this, I'll be building out that website with more functions, perhaps discussion groups and things like that. But for now, it's just a place where you can get in touch with me if you want. And I'm on Facebook, Mike Hassell. I'm here in Nashville, and that's the best way to get a hold of me, is probably through Deep Tradeoffs. Or I don't really use Facebook Messenger because I decided a long time ago I'd had enough notifications and distractions in my life. So the website is the best way to get in touch with me if somebody wanted to do that directly.
No problem. Okay. So I will have a transcript of my conversation with Mike on the show page, which is myhelps.us. I will link out to his book, and I also link out to his website, and tag him on social media when I promote the episode on Instagram and Facebook. So if this conversation resonated with you, and you want to explore it further, like we said, learning to understand that everybody has a reason for picking their opinion, and it's usually you shouldn't try to coerce someone to come over to your side. Instead, you should learn to understand where they're coming from, And Mike's talking about the trade-offs and, and the polarization of, right from wrong, or honesty from deception, and, kindness to tough love, and all the other things that it's great for us to learn. And, we walk around a lot of times unconscious about things. And one of the things I do in the show is to bring your awareness to things, because they said that a mind that's expanded with knowledge can never return. So now that we have brought the conversation of trying to understand the trade-offs of choosing a side and understanding other people's opinions and journeys or whatever. So I hope you pick up a copy of Mike's book and learn more on this topic. And he says, if you want to connect with him, you can, reach out to him on his website. But I mean, I think that it's a, it's a great conversation and great learning to have.
I have a lot more to write about this, and I'd love to hear from your listeners about what resonates with them or what they find troublesome or unacceptable.
Yes,
both sides.
exactly.
I'm all ears.
Yes, exactly. Awesome. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in to this week's episode of Author's Corner. Mike's book again is called Deep Tradeoffs: Restoring Balance and Respect in a Polarized and Angry World. So pick up a copy. It's available on Amazon, wherever books are sold, or you can reach out to him on his website. Mike, thanks for being on the show. Thank you guys for tuning in. Until next time, namaste.
Thank you, Myrna.
You're welcome.